Okay, Frank Bonada here for LowKick MMA. Joining me once again is Ross Markey. And we're going to be breaking down UFC Vegas 62, I believe. UFC Fight Night, Grasso versus Araujo. How's it going, mate? And what do you think of this card?
It's going well, mate. It's going well here. Back next weekend. We have a week off for the UFC, so we're back next weekend for UFC Vegas 62 at Grasso Araujo. It's a decent card on paper. Kind of not that big in terms of name value in the main event, but it's still a high level main event on paper. The undercard, we've got some decent fights in the undercard. Daniel Rodriguez makes a quick notice return against Neil Magny, which is kind of a standout fight, as is Askarov and Brandon Royval at flyweight.
Yeah, we saw last week with the Dern card, like maybe not the biggest in terms of name value, but a lot of finishes in there, a lot of excitement, and this card can definitely do the same. Let's get stuck into that main event. Alexa Grasso taking on Viviane Araujo. Grasso comes in as a decent favorite, I believe, minus 200 around that line. Araujo plus 175. I think there's quite a clear side in this fight, just looking at it sort of stylistically. But what's your initial read on this one, mate?
Well, I've always been incredibly high on Alexa Grasso, even before she made that flyweight move. I think her last defeat was against strawweight champion Carla Esparza before she made that flyweight move. Obviously, that cancelled fight with Claudia Gadelha, but she's a team Lobo with Irene Aldana. Very, very good striker on the feet, and she displayed her grappling ability against Joanne Wood back in March at UFC Columbus with that submission win.
You could make a solid case for Grasso to have even won that fight against Esparza. I literally just rewatched that one today, and she's a very competitive fighter. Showed off in that Esparza fight that even though she's sort of known for this slick boxing, this Mexican boxing she's got, her sort of defensive ground game is solid. She nearly submitted Esparza with the armbar, and then of course, caught Joanne Wood more recently with that Reneka choke. So yeah, I think this is Grasso's fight to win. Araujo, she hits hard. She's very hard hitting flyweight, but I think her game, especially in the stand up, is not as deep as Grasso. Grasso's a very slick boxer, whereas Araujo, maybe Grasso isn't quite as powerful as Araujo, but that's turned it into this slick technician, whereas Araujo sort of relies on that big overhand. I think there's potential for Grasso just to land big sort of round-winning shots throughout this fight. And I would definitely give her the edge on the ground as well if the fight does hit the mat. So I would probably go towards like a Grasso decision, something like that. But regardless, I think it is her fight to win.
I think so too. I have to agree with that. I think, like you said, her boxing is just it's very good for that for flyweight division. Like I said, she's with Irene Aldana over in Team Lobo in Mexico. And her grappling is very, very, very aggressive. She's very tight on top and very good top control. And if it goes to the ground, you're going to have to favor Grasso as well. But like you said, Araujo is kind of an aggressive fighter. All out. I mean, she's a former pancreas strawweight champion, I think, and then she came to the UFC as a bantamweight and now she's fighting a flyweight. But it's, she's got losses there on her record to Jessica Aya and Caitlin Chukagian. It's just kind of been topsy turvy, and she hasn't really got 100% on her feet and kind of got her feet under her in the UFC yet. But it's an important main event for Viviane Araujo, definitely.
You got to remember, she is 35 years old now as well. Yes. So and all the momentum behind Grasso. She's on that 3-fight winning streak. So yeah, I just see Grasso winning this one and going on to big things, I think. We'll move on to the co-main event next. We're going off Tapology as usual. So right now they have Misha Cirkunov versus Alonzo Menifield listed as the co-main event of the night. I mean, you've got to go with Alonzo Menifield, right? Misha Cirkunov is sort of the ghost of the fighter he once could have been. Just hasn't lived up to the potential and is now 4 losses in his last 5. Coming up against Menifield. Menifield is just a sort of athletic freak, very strong, very aggressive top control. we saw him just absolutely blitz Mozharov, or who knows what.
Yeah.
You know what? Is that his name? We don't even know.
We think so. We think so at the
moment. Yeah, he's just strong, physical, can take a shot. I think he's just gonna run through Misha Cirkunov in this one. You know, Menifield coming in as a quite a heavy favorite, and rightly so in my opinion.
Yeah, I have to agree. I think like you said, Misha's on that skid now as well. I think it's 3 losses in a row.
Yep.
He tested waters at middleweight against Krzysztof Jotko, I believe, and that didn't go to plan for him. He has a decent win recently over Jimmy Crute. That's his most recent win, but
3 years ago.
3 years ago, yeah, recently, yeah. But no, like you said, Alonso Menifield is that kind of just athletic freak of nature. You kind of have to think on paper that he gets the win here quite handily as well.
Yeah, it's not really one you can go into that deep, but I just think the durability and maybe even the mindset of Cirkunov is sort of.
And it's not exactly as if Alonso Menifield is this daunting prospect at light heavyweight. He was at one stage in his career, but I just think it's more so of a case of Misha starting to slow down, approach maybe the end of his career.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it's not a huge amount to talk about on that one. So let's move on to one of the most sort of exciting fights in the card. Jonathan Martinez taking on Cub Swanson at bantamweight. Martinez, I think it's still fair to call him a prospect of sorts. Super talented fighter, very nice striking, taking on one of the biggest fan favorites on the roster, Cub Swanson, who I believe is his first fight down at bantamweight.
Bantamweight debut, yep.
Martinez comes in as a slight favorite, minus 170, which is reasonable considering he's the younger fighter. Obviously, Cub Swanson's 38 years old, whereas Martinez 28 years old. What's your initial read on this one?
Like you said, Jonathan Martinez can definitely still be classed as a decent prospect at the bantamweight level. Do you know what I mean? Off a win against Vince Morales and Alejandro Perez before them. But like Cub Swanson is his first fight at bantamweight. He's getting on in terms of years and there's miles on the clock. Perennial featherweight contender. It'll be interesting to see how that cut goes from to 135 because I always got the impression that 145 was quite a difficult cut for Cub. He wasn't always the biggest featherweight on the roster, but it'll be interesting to see how he fares a division lower at that age as well, and with that many miles on the clock. You know what I mean? WEC veteran, perennial UFC featherweight contender.
Yeah, I want to be skeptical about the cut down, but then you see guys like Aldo, and it's just like, I doubted him so much, and look how well he did. So, yeah, but regardless, I think the main thing that sways me towards Jonathan Martinez in this one is just the age, maybe the age paired with the cut, because 38 years old for a bantamweight, that is old. Yes, Martinez also is known for his striking. So yeah, I probably would lean towards Swanson really impressed me against Elkins, so I don't want to count him out by any means. He landed that sort of wheel kick into punches combination. I was like, bloody hell, he's still got it, but how depleted is he going to be, and how durable? Martinez has shown time and time again that he can go the full 3 rounds. I probably would lean towards Martinez sort of a late stoppage of sorts.
That really is the question. Like you said, he looked fantastic in that open. I think it was an open round finish first round finish against Darren Elkins with that, like you said, that wheel kick finish into the strikes. But I think a lot has to be made for this cut to bantamweight at this stage in his career. It's quite late in Cub's career, and Martinez, like you mentioned, is a smooth enough operator on the feet as well. Yeah.
So yeah, pick for me, Jonathan Martinez. Again, going off topology, we're speaking about soft camera, but Askarov versus Brandon Royval is reportedly been dropped down to the prelims, which is an absolute crime. Because it really is one of the most competitive fights on the card. A real clash of styles, and sort of, Royval is this crazy wild man finisher who will just go in and throw everything, including the kitchen sink, at his opponents, whereas Askarov is much more of a grinder and doesn't mind taking the fight decision. So it is a real two fighters who their careers couldn't be more different. And yet they found themselves at this crossroads. Go on, mate. Don't let me interrupt you.
Absolutely. Askarov riding that losing, that he lost his first fight of his career back in March against Kaikara France, wasn't it? I think, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But before then, like even his only other non-win before that was his draw against Brandon Moreno, interim champion, former undisputed champion. Like you said, Brandon Royval winning that win against Match Now, that submission win. They're just two hugely contrasting styles. But I really hoping against hope here that fight doesn't get buried on the prelims, because as much profile you can put onto a flyweight fight, I think the UFC should really be doing that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Askarov, you could argue that the Kaikara France fight, there's a solid case to say that he won that one, and then
very close fight, yeah, indeed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge Kara France fan, so I was sort of backing him and gave him the edge, but maybe that's because of personal bias. I saw a lot of people scoring it for Askarov, and rightly so. And if so, he would have gone on to fight Moreno, and who knows where he could have been. But yeah, I find it hard to like actually get a set read on this one though, in terms of a result, because how can you predict a Brandon Royval fight? Like it's just the man is just pure chaos. Like he probably has the power to knock out anyone in this division, I would think. But he does gas out. He does leave himself vulnerable. Yeah, I find it hard to put a pick on this, to be honest.
It's a really tough fight to pick as well, because like you said, Brandon Royval is just this crazy wild man style, and he's able to create these scrambles and these different, these different submission openings. And like we've seen it against Match Now, we've seen it against Kaikara France on Fight Island that time. They both kind of rocked each other, and then Brandon latches onto a guillotine choke out of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? He's just, like you said, it's a really, really hard fight to pick, and I can't really give a clear line on who I'm leaning towards. It's Brandon's ability to create these kind of scrambles and these different submission setups is going to be tricky for Askar to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, Askarov is a bigger favorite here in this fight than Jonathan Martinez is over Cub Swanson. So, I guess if you're a better man, then maybe go for the Royval side, Royval early or something. But yeah, especially because like so much of Askar's dominance can come from being a heavy sort of top control wrestler.
Yes.
Royval's sort of specialty is the scrambles, the capitalizing in the chaotic nature of scrambles. So watching that dynamic play out is going to be absolutely fascinating. But yeah, I don't have a clear, I couldn't give a set prediction on it just because there's too many variables to sort of consider.
It is. It's very difficult to get a completely clear, crystal clear read of this fight, because Askar has been quite dominant in his first 4, arguably 5 UFC outings, wins over Tim Elliott, Alejandro Pantoja, and Joseph Benavidez. But no, like you mentioned there, it's Brandon Royval really thrives in these scrambling situations and these kind of abilities to sweep and take top control. And if he can create those kind of scrambles early is probably his best option against Askarov. But if he can't really get beyond that wrestling and top pressure and just overall heaviness from Askarov, you can see Askar riding out a decision win.
Yeah, it's a fascinating fight, really fascinating, and let's pray it doesn't get buried on the prelims. Up next, welterweight clash: Neil Magny, the perennial gatekeeper of the welterweight division, taking on Daniel Rodriguez. Obviously, Rodriguez only fought recently at UFC 279, defeating Li Jingliang via split decision, a very controversial split decision that a lot of people had the Leech winning. First of all, let's have a quick recap of that one. Did you score it for D-Rod or the Leech?
That was such a tough fight. I had to go back and watch it a couple of times, but I think I just maybe leaned towards the Leech in that one. Yeah. It was very close fight, and you know what I mean, on short amount of days' notice as well for both men. Credit to both men stepping in there, not preparing for each other at all during fight camps, respective fight camps. But I think I did score that fight for Jingliang 100%.
Yeah, no, so did I when I watched it. The thing about that fight that sort of makes me a little bit concerned for D-Rod in this one. Footage emerged after of Rodriguez going through the tunnel, and he's talking to his corner and saying, like, talking about how hard Jingliang hit him, and he actually says like there were 2 moments where he was essentially knocked out for like a split second just because of how hard Jing Liang was hitting him.
Yeah.
I mean, to anyone who sort of sparred sparred heavy and stuff, that being hit like that does take a bit of time to recover. And obviously D-Rod is like an elite athlete. He's going to have a better recovery time than most people. But you know, that wasn't long ago. Yeah, it'll be 3 weeks when this fight comes around.
It's a crazy quick turnaround. I think he did mention something like that. He mentioned something along the lines of every time he hit me, he hurt me. Something like that.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I think, but like you said, it's a 3 week turnaround. But I think the only kind of solace D-Rod can take from that is Neil Magny's ability to mix them together with the wrestling and his striking. Do you know what I mean? Overall, just compared to like a really heavy hitter like Li Jingliang might stand to him in this one. It's very, very short notice turnaround. 3 weeks isn't an awful lot of time to prepare for anybody, let alone Neil Magny, who's the stalwart of the welterweight division. But no, Daniel Rodriguez riding that win. His confidence is high as well. So
4-fight winning streak right now for Rodriguez. Going to this one. So yeah, he's got all the momentum, but yeah, that does just worry me. It is a very quick turnaround. But yeah, Magny doesn't hold a huge amount of power. He is sort of a decision fighter, I suppose. You know, his last 3 wins all come by decision. So I suppose, you know, Rodriguez and his team can take some sort of solace from that. I think I'm leaning towards the Rodriguez side, in all honesty, because I think maybe his sort of striking fundamentals are slightly better. He showed off that jab to like very good effect against the Leech, you know, obviously winning the fight. He's also a very competent defensive wrestler, mixes game up. He's got some good low kicks as well. I've always thought that Magny's sort of long frame, you know, how skinny and long his legs are, might leave him open to a leg kick heavy approach. So I think that could go in D-Rod's favor. I think Magny's sort of the outlier in this fight could be the clinch game between them, because we've seen how good Magny can be in the clinch against, you know, multiple opponents, where he sort of just like saps their energy and you know, slowly just turns the fight around without them even realizing. So I would go Daniel Rodriguez, probably Daniel Rodriguez by decision if I had to pick. Yeah, do you have a clear prediction on this one?
Not an entirely clear prediction, but like you said, it is a bit of a worry with Rodriguez making that very, very quick turnaround against a guy like Neil Magny, who's able to like take over a fight gradually. Do you know what I mean? I think we had this conversation regarding one of the fights for Bellator Dublin 2 weeks ago. It's just one of these guys. He's one of these guys, Neil Magny, who could just, before you know it, the fight's out of your hands completely. You just rack up minutes and rack up control, and you know what I mean, just impose his game, and then before you know it, the fight's completely out of your hands. Like his most recent loss against Shavkat Rakhmonov, but who doesn't lose against Shavkat Rakhmonov? You know what I mean? So, that was a decent win for him against Jeff Neal. He really surprised me in that fight, Neil Magny against Jeff Neal, that victory. It's a tough fight for Neil. It really is a tough fight for Neil on paper, but it's interesting to see if he can kind of impose his will and maybe take that fight away from D-Rod without D-Rod really realizing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think I
think he is really one of those fighters, Neil Magny, where the fight's almost gone before you realize. You know what I mean?
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think that, like I said before, the clinch game is a big part of that. There's just like slow realization, like something you're in the 3rd round, and like, wait, I'm definitely 2 rounds down, aren't I? Shit. But yeah, I just, that's the thing. I think if it was like a completely clean slate, like both fighters going in with the same camp, no injuries, no recent fights, anything like that, I would definitely go Daniel Rodriguez. But considering the close nature of the turnaround and whatnot, I'm a little unsure of it, but I still probably back Daniel Rodriguez.
Yeah.
So that is the main card that we have from Tapology. Just looking at the prelims now, any fights that sort of catch your eye that you'd like to go over?
Let me take a look here. We've got Nick Maximov is back against Jacob Malkoun. That's decent. That's a decent fight on paper as well. Nick Maximov, of course, from that Nate Diaz, that camp in California. Against Jacob Malkoun. I think he's a training partner of Robert Whittaker, if I'm correct. I think.
Yeah, big wrestler.
That's a decent little standout fight on the preliminary card.
Yeah, 100%. Our own Alex Bahunin. I've probably butchered the man's name,
I
but
think it is Alex Bahunin. I think it is Bahunin. Yeah.
he's just done a cracking interview for us over there, so I'll link that in right now with Nick Maximov. Yeah, I mean that's a fun fight. They're both just two very heavy wrestling based fighters coming from two quite prestigious camps. So yeah, that's an interesting one. I know Maximov was talking about like trying to get his boxing going a lot more now. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if his game starts to evolve the more than just being like a very aggressive wrestler. We also have Victor Henry, who of course beat Raoni Barcelos on very short notice, I believe. Obviously Barcelos fought last weekend, dominated Trevin Jones over 3 rounds. Henry's taking on Rafael Assuncao, one of the veterans of the bantamweight division. He's beat at featherweight as well, I believe. Yeah, a sort of veteran versus veteran fight, I suppose, even though Henry's only been in the UFC for one fight. Assuncao's really dropped off as of late, 4 losses in a row. I mean, in the mix, 3 of those being finishes in the mix. That brutal Cody Garbrandt walkaway KO, and obviously he was knocked out by Ricky Simone as well. Henry's a huge minus 315 favorite, which I think is probably a bit wide, considering he's not really like a knockout artist, so to speak. And Assuncao is a wily veteran, but yeah, that's a fun fight to sort of gauge if Henry is as good as that initial UFC debut indicated.
Yeah, no, Victor Henry looked very, very impressive, I have to say, against Raoni Barcelos. Barcelos displayed just last weekend his overall skill set against Trevin Jones. He's a really, really interesting customer at bantamweight still. Raoni Barcelos this late into his career, but no, like you said, Rafael Assuncao, that devastating loss to Cody Garbrandt, that walkaway KO, and that most recent loss against Ricky Simone, another knockout loss. But like you said, he's a wily veteran, isn't he? Assuncao at bantamweight, he has wins over Anjamin Sterling, he has wins over Marlon. I think he's
Masvidal.
Does he have a win over? Yeah, Masvidal as well. Yeah, TJ Dillashaw. He's a win over TJ as well.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
He's kind of one of those forgotten figures at bantamweight, isn't he, Assuncao? But no, he's kind of in that scale as well. This late into his career, it seems like this year it's the year of a lot of these veterans coming and going, doesn't it?
100%. Yeah, a lot of veterans on that card last weekend as well. But yeah, I mean, Assuncao's really been around forever, like since the early 2000s. So I don't know, a loss here, and he has to hang up the gloves, doesn't he? I mean, the UFC will surely cut him.
I think so.
I mean, even a win is probably the time to call it. It's a shame, I guess, you couldn't get on that Brazil card at the end of the start of next year. We've got Mike the Truth Jackson.
Mike Jackson,
is back against Pete Rodriguez. And then also Tatsuro Taira is the last guy I sort of want to talk about, taking on CJ Vegara. I know a lot of guys like Jack Slack and a few others are quite big on Vegara. I really don't see why, to be honest. But Taira is considered one of the big prospects in this division. Sort of Japanese undefeated prospect, 11-0. Came in and put on a impressive sort of display against Carlos Candelero in his UFC debut. So yeah, Taira is definitely one to keep an eye on, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, his UFC debut came back in March. Ex-Shooto fighter. Taira win against Carlos Candelero. He handed him his first defeat as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting fight between him and CJ Vergara. Like you said, a lot of people kind of quite high on CJ as well for some reason.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the card. I mean, just looking at the rest of the fights, Melsik Baksadarian. I shouldn't even put myself into that situation to pronounce that name, against Joe Anderson Brito. Brito's been quite fun lately. Todorovic versus Jordan Wright, 2 heavy hitting middleweights who both get knocked out a lot. And Pierre Rodriguez versus Sam Hughes. Sam Hughes looked good in the last couple of fights. Not too much else to go over. Fun main card. As long as they leave Askarov versus Royval, Magny and Rodriguez in the mix in that main card.
They've got to leave Magny and Rodriguez in that main card, or even more so Askarov and Brandon Royval. I just love to see a flyweight top 10 flyweight fight will land on the main event of a fight night in the future next year. Let's hope.
100%. There can't be many ranked fights.
Has to be the year of the flyweights.
The year of the flyweights.
It's got to be.
There can't be many ranked fighters on this card, like ranked fighter versus fighter sort of thing. There's the Magny and Rodriguez fight, and then are any of the other fighters on the like? How are you going to include like top 10 fighters on the prelims? It's just outrageous. Yeah. So we'll start to wrap up now. I'll give a couple of bets out, but I really don't have much on this one. I've taken Alexa Grasso in a parlay with Tatsuro Taira, which I believe comes in at just about plus money. I think they've both got a very good chance of winning this fight. Their respective fights. I took Daniel Rodriguez at a plus 100 underdog. I think it's going to be a close fight. I took Rodriguez against Jing Liang, and that played out just about. And then I also parlayed Menifield with the guy that's fighting Mike Jackson, Pete Rodriguez. And that comes out at I think it's like minus 140. That's all I've got on this one. I'm going away next week, so I might not even be able to watch the card live for once. But do you reckon you're going to take any action on this fight, this card?
It's a really tough card. Like you said, it's an exciting card on paper. It really is, that main card especially, but it's a difficult card to kind of gauge what could kind of cash for you and what could not cash. I think Alexa Grasso is maybe a decent look. Alonso Menifield as well, and like you said, Daniel Rodriguez. I know we had a bit of a discussion about it there, but it's like you said, if that fight was granted 6 or 8 week camp for both guys, 6 or 8 weeks out, you'd probably lean to Daniel Rodriguez quite clearly against Neil Magny, just stylistically. But no, I go with Alexa Grasso, Daniel Rodriguez, and Alonso Menifield. Off that main card for sure.
100%. All right, perfect. That's this week wrapped up. Obviously there's been a lot of breaks lately, but I guess the next one will be UFC 280 after this, so that'll be a cracking card to break down. So definitely subscribe, like, and keep an eye out for that one. Just dropped a Justin Gaethje interview, so definitely go and give that a watch. Quite a few guys on this card that we've interviewed as well. Nick Maximov was a really good one, and there are definitely a few others. I'll link them in the bio. Oh, Neil Magny we had on as well. So yeah, subscribe, like, and go find me and Ross on Twitter and all the socials. I think it's just Ross Markey and Frank Bonada, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Hopefully see you all next week.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.